In the 1960s, waves of riots sweep Europe and the United States. An atmosphere of rebellion envelops much of the globe. It is a time of political turmoil. For those hungry for change, Third World revolutionaries provide hope, inspiration, and violence. The Middle East burns with hatred as Palestinians resort to terrorism in their fight for a homeland.
We learn from all the revolutions, and we take from every revolution the suitable way which can support and which can push our revolution.
Terrorism has gone international. The streets of Havana, Cuba. It was here that Castro's victorious rebels triumphantly marched in 1959 to celebrate their overthrow of the Batista regime. In January 1966, 500 revolutionary activists from Third World countries gather for a convention orchestrated by Fidel Castro. It will be known as the Tri-Continental Conference. For the first time, representatives of underground and guerrilla movements can contact one another openly and discuss future cooperation. Just 4 months after the Tri-Continental Conference, with KGB support, Fidel Castro opens 12 training camps on the outskirts of Havana. The recruits have arrived from every corner of the globe: Japan, Europe, Africa, Latin America, and the Middle East. The participants exchange tricks of the trade and forge transnational bridges of terror. Some of the instructors are Tupamaros, urban guerrilla fighters from Uruguay, who since 1963 have led a successful terror campaign against the government. Among the zealous alumni are Palestinians, soon to account for more international terror attacks than any other group in history.
We are a liberation movement. We are asking only to return back to our homes, from which we had been kicked out by a great force.
Yasser Arafat, an engineer by training, visits Algeria in 1963 to study the tactics used by the FLN to defeat the French. There he learns how a Muslim national movement fought against the rule of a Western power. Arafat soon becomes one of the key figures in the Palestinian campaign against Israel. They call him Abu Ammar. He is charismatic and a brilliant orator. For the Palestinians, the newly born state of Israel and their defeat in the 1948 war were devastating events. They dream of an all-out armed struggle to liberate their homeland. With no outside political support, their movement appeared doomed. But in 1964, one figure gives the Palestinians the support they have been waiting for. Egypt's president, Gamal Abdel Nasser, adopts the Palestinian cause, hosting a conference that leads to the birth of the Palestinian Liberation Organization, the PLO. In early 1967, he signs a defense pact with Arab nations neighboring Israel. Soon, from the Mediterranean to the Persian Gulf, the whole Arab world rises to defeat their enemy on the field of battle. For the first time in 20 years, the Palestinians' hope reaches fever pitch. But their hopes are about to be shattered. On June 5th, the Israelis attack first, lashing out hard at Syria, Jordan, and Egypt. Massive bombings wipe out enemy air forces in the first hours of the war. Over Over the next 6 days, in an ingenious combined military operation, Israel triples its size. Troops seize the Gaza Strip and Sinai Peninsula from Egypt, the Golan Heights from Syria, and East Jerusalem and the West Bank from Jordan. Three Arab armies are crushed. The Palestinians' hope of destroying Israel is ruined, and the dream of a glorious victory goes up in smoke. Waves of Palestinians are once again forced to flee their homes. 250,000 pour into decrepit camps in Jordan. As time passes, their hopes dim. The abject conditions of their lives become a breeding ground for hatred and revenge. Pegging their struggle to the wider Arab world has proved a disaster. From here on, they vow to rely only on themselves to win back their homeland. In poverty, humiliation, and despair, many choose the path of the militant. New organizations such as the People's Front for the Liberation of Palestine and the Palestinian Democratic Front are formed under the PLO's umbrella.
We call it a back base, where from this base we can launch Fida'in and guerrilla actions against Israeli occupation, and we can, from this base, we can support also the mass revolution we were dreaming of inside the occupied territories.
From their bases in Jordan, the PLO guerrillas form small resistance cells. They discover the havoc of landmines, often stolen from Jordanian military installations, which they bury on well-traveled Israeli roads. Small guerrilla groups soon cross the Jordanian border into Israel, and a cycle of raid and retaliation begins.
We thought that the Vietnamese example for us is the most successful and attractive one, because in Vietnam we had North Vietnam, and by the way, our propaganda at that time, we were speaking about the need of a Hanoi for the Palestinian revolution, and that the revolution will not be successful unless there is this strong and stable Hanoi.
In March 1968, a bus carrying school children on their way to a seaside holiday runs over a landmine. In response, Israel's army advances to destroy guerrilla bases in Jordan, hoping to end Palestinian terror attacks once and for all.
They came blatantly with their tanks and artillery and troops messed up. So we realized that something was about to happen. I think they were overconfident. Early in the morning at about 5, we were told that the first Israeli elements had crossed one of the bridges.
The target, the village of Karami, a stronghold of Palestinian resistance. One of the best equipped and toughest armies in the region is met by 300 poorly armed Palestinian fighters. Yasser Arafat, who was not in Karami during the battle, has ordered them to stand their ground. By noon, half of them are dead and many surrender. But then, unexpectedly, Jordan's army joins the battle, raining artillery shells on the invading Israelis. 29 Israeli soldiers are killed, 90 injured. After several hours, the Israeli army withdraws. For the Palestinians, the Battle of Karami is the first victory after their 1967 defeat. They present it as a stunning triumph, returning them the honor they lost. Yasser Arafat becomes powerful, and assumes control of all factions of the Palestinian Liberation Organization. He oversees a new reign of terror on Israel. Every one of its citizens and institutions is now a legitimate target. A year and a half after the Six-Day War, 47 Israelis have been killed and many more wounded. But the violence flounders in the face of a superior military enemy with no intention of giving in. The attacks fail to advance the Palestinian cause. Time is ripe for a new strategy, one that explodes with a vengeance onto the international stage. The era of skyjacking is born.
100 years of terror will return in a moment here on the History Channel.
See, the video games...
After 67 and the formation of the PLO, with the two major organizations being the PFLP and the Democratic Front, these three became the core of the resistance. Now, there emerged within the PFLP a group that advocated airplane hijacking as a means to bring the attention of the world to the Palestinian case. And I've heard members of the PFLP talking about this as early as 1968 when I was there, and openly. And soon the first act took place.
Rome, July 1968. Flight 426 to Tel Aviv is about to become entangled in the Palestinian struggle. 56 minutes after takeoff, 3 armed Palestinian terrorists burst into the cockpit, hold the pilot at gunpoint, and order him to fly to Algeria.
That time the idea was to bring the plane down and ask for the release of some prisoner or the publication on radio and TV, some statement or other.
To stop the terrorists from creating carnage, Israel complies with their demands and hands over 16 Palestinian prisoners. It is a glittering prize for the terrorists. Hijacking seems to work.
And then this happened. A group hijacked 3 airplanes at the same time and brought them into the Azraq area in Jordan.
And then those aircraft kidnapped reported over Beirut at 1512. Per una destinazione. This is Barrett. Carlo, this is Barrett. Barrett gave the general call regarding those 2 flights. Affirmative, and both aircraft hijacked. Both aircraft kidnapped.
On September 6, 1970, 3 commercial airlines are hijacked over Western Europe. Once in control, the terrorists make for Dawson Airfield, near the town of Zarqa in Jordan.
The aircraft passed overhead my house west of the city and the suburbs, practically knocking the roof off. We had heard of some incidents occurring in terms of aircraft being hijacked, but we didn't know what their destination was. And suddenly it turned out that all these aircraft were actually headed for Jordan.
With 475 passengers captive, the world tensely awaits their fate. For the first time, the hijackers discover the power of television.
Aboard the TWA plane, that is, the American Jewish women and children.
They are not kept because they are Jewish. They are kept just for interrogation. For the reason I mentioned, the United States gives the right, even to their random captains, to go and serve in the Israeli army. This is one of the ways the United States of America, the imperialist world force, helps Israel in attacking us.
Excuse me, we wanted the captain and the stewardess to tell us about the sanitary conditions on the TWA plane, how things are.
Would you like to smell?
Yes,
What do you think?
yes.
They don't have water. What do you mean asking such a question? They don't have water on plane.
On September 12th, the plane is emptied of all passengers. The time is 3:15 in the afternoon.
PFLP had destroyed completely today the 3 planes, practicing one of its strategical lines to hit the imperialist and Zionist interests all over the world.
Well, actually, the hijackings, as far as I was concerned, were the straw that broke the camel's back. Something had to be done. And the humiliation of having aircraft flown into the country and innocent passengers being whisked away to various parts of the country and being unable to do anything about it, and subsequently having these aircraft blown up was something that questioned whether Jordan really existed or whether it didn't.
5 days later, Hussein's army launches all-out war on Jordan's refugee camps. A bloodbath follows as thousands of Palestinians are killed. Tens of thousands are wounded. Many of the Palestinians are expelled, forced to relocate to rundown camps in Lebanon. The PLO changes its address to Beirut. From the ashes of the burning camps, a new and vicious terror group is born under the PLO's umbrella. In commemoration of the recent tragic events, it will be called Black September. From its new bases in Lebanon, it seizes every opportunity to attack Israel's northern border, as well as hitting its rivals inside Lebanon. Soon it joins other radical organizations in leaving stark trails on international terrorism's bloody map. On May 9th, 1972, the terror against aviation targets is stepped up. Black September gunmen issue an ultimatum after capturing a Sabena flight. They land in Tel Aviv and demand the release of 317 Palestinian prisoners in exchange for the plane's 90 passengers. They threaten to blow up the plane. As the countdown to disaster ticks away, Israel decides to take action. Israel informs the terrorists that they will comply. Then, disguised as mechanics, come to service the plane. A commando unit led by future Prime Minister Ehud Barak stands ready to storm it. The rescue is over in just 90 seconds. 3 of the 4 terrorists are shot dead, and the other, Therese Halasse, is wounded. She is caught on the wing trying to escape.
I don't regret anything. I am sorry for those who died, that's all. But I don't regret what I did, not at all. Actions like that were necessary.
Simply a cold calculation? No thought about death?
Like a soldier going to the front line.
1 passenger is killed during the attack and 3 wounded. But the success carries an important message. Terrorism will not prevail. But just a few months after the daring rescue, the Palestinians stage another attack, an operation that reveals just how wide the web of international terror has spread.
100 years of terror will return in a moment here on the History Channel.
The Palestinian terror network finds one of its closest allies in Germany. It begins with the German protest movement in 1968, when students demonstrate against the Vietnam War, for nuclear disarmament, and for a better society.
Young people from better, from wealthy or middle-class families, for the first time in their life got in conflict with the state, with the power of the government, with the police, and they experienced suddenly the feeling of being a victim. To be a victim, you know, being caught by the police at a demonstration and put in jail, and even if it's only for a couple of hours or days, you suddenly see the world in a different way. You see the world as a victim, and you have the feeling that you're a victim like say, the oppressed people in the world. And so this, I think, helped to form some kind of a very violent and radical opposition towards the government.
When the student protests fail to change policy, many of the radicals become militant. Andreas Baader, an art student in West Berlin, becomes radicalized during the student protest movement when he decides that only violence can change society. He is deeply influenced by Gudrun Ensslin, a Marxist and political activist. Another Marxist and leader of the student left, Ulrike Meinhof, is also disillusioned with the failure of the student revolts. In May 1970, she joins forces with Andreas Baader and Gudrun Ensslin, and the notorious Baader-Meinhof gang is born. At first, they are an ideological movement, fighting for justice and equality, but they soon turn to terrorism and decide to create an urban guerrilla group modeled after Uruguay's Tupamaros. They devise code names, acquire weapons and false ID cards, and rob banks to finance their operations. In September, they launch their terrorist campaign to destroy the capitalist establishment, and they are forced to go underground.
After they went underground, the whole group went to the Near East, to a camp of the El Fatah camp. They had contacts with the Red Prince, Hassan Salameh, because he was running the secret service inside these camps there. And the first thing for them to do was going where the PLO was training other groups, Irish groups and whatsoever type of groups. So they went there. It was rather easy.
In 1971, the ringleaders of Baader-Meinhof journeyed to Lebanese valleys. In these camps, they trained together with guerrilla fighters from places as far-flung as Spain and Latin America. Palestinian instructors teach them the art of sabotage, explosives, and guerrilla combat. In the camp, the bond between the Baader-Meinhof and their Palestinian hosts grows stronger, preparing the ground for future cooperation. Then they return to Germany to escalate their campaign of violence. In May 1972, they explode a series of 15 bombs throughout West Germany. A massive manhunt is launched with dragnets, wiretappings, and interrogations. Germany is on a knife edge. Terrorist reports flood the evening news, then a break. On June 1st, 1972, Baader is captured in a spectacular ambush by sharpshooters, highway patrols, and helicopters. 2 weeks later, Ulrike Meinhof is arrested in an apartment in Hanover.
And then they were in prison. And I think then the government, the German authorities, made their biggest mistake, because they kept them in prison as if they were political prisoners, solitary confinement, all these things. So the government and the authorities made a symbol out of that group.
In the wake of the arrests, the group grows and changes its name to the RAF, the Red Army faction. Its activity continues with orders issued from behind bars, as does its alliance with other terror groups. In the summer of 1972, the RAF is contacted by Black September's operations officer in Europe, Ali Hassan Salameh, nicknamed the Red Prince. He requests their assistance in the form of local intelligence. The target, the Olympic Games in Munich. In August, RAF activists begin to monitor security procedures around the Olympic Village, preparing the ground for the Palestinian terrorists. August 26, 1972. Millions of viewers around the world tune in to watch the 17th Olympic Games begin. "28 Israeli athletes arrive full of optimism and hope. September 5th, Black September strikes. At 4:40 a.m., heavily armed terrorists break into 31 Cannoli-Strasse, catching everybody by surprise. They search the corridors for the Israeli team. Two athletes are executed. 9 are taken hostage. In a matter of minutes, the terrorists seize the Israeli compound. They issue a demand to be taken to the airport with their hostages. It is a rare opportunity for the Germans to launch a rescue operation. But the police lose control. The terrorists panic, open fire, and release a hand grenade. As the smoke clears, all 9 Israeli hostages lie dead. For Israel, the Olympic Games are over. The Israeli team returns home with 11 coffins. What started out with an atmosphere of hope has ended in a bloody massacre. Between 1972 and 1976, 34 terror incidents and deadly attacks are carried out against Israeli targets in Israel and abroad. In the international arena, aircraft hijacking has become the favorite tool to attract world attention. Constantly under threat, commercial aviation will never be the same again. Nairobi, January 1976. El Al Flight 535 is on its way to Kenya. On the ground, a group of 5 terrorists, 3 Palestinians and 2 Germans, also make their way to Nairobi International Airport. Their aim, to bring down the plane and blow it up on the ground. But despite their menacing plan, the plane lands safely. Kenya's security service has caught wind of the plot in the nick of time and arrests the 5 terrorists. An Israeli Mossad team is summoned, arriving in secret. After a short interrogation, the terrorists are injected with anesthesia. The next day, 5 coffins are loaded onto the cargo bay of the same El Al plane. At 6:30 in the morning, they take off. Destination, Israel. When they wake up, the terrorists find themselves in Israeli hands. The 2 Germans, Thomas Rieder and Brigitte Schulz, are imprisoned in this highly secure facility in central Israel. Their capture is kept secret. Shocked at the arrest of their colleagues, the Palestinians vow to retaliate. 6 months later, they choose Entebbe as a remote location for the hijacked plane, hoping to avoid a rescue attempt. Palestinian terrorists siege an Air France Airbus refueling on its way to Paris and force the pilot to fly to Entebbe, Uganda. The event catches Israel by surprise.
The terrorists want 53 Palestinian freedom fighters to be released from jail in Israel. They're also asking for the freedom of German prisoners.
In Jerusalem, the deadline to a disaster ticks away. Israel is determined not to give in to terror and to strike back. Elite Israeli troops land at Entebbe Airport, taking the terrorists by surprise. They storm the terminal and free the hostages. 1 Israeli officer and 3 hostages are killed. The success of the daring rescue appears on the front pages of the world press. But the Palestinians denounce the operation as an act of stark Israeli aggression. In Germany, for the RAF, Entebbe has also been a blow. Its members are imprisoned in Israel, and its key leaders are still behind bars. But in the summer of 1977, the RAF decides to use all necessary means to free their leaders from jail.
100 100 Years of Terror will return in a moment here on the History Channel.
In the new...
We now return to the History Channel's presentation of 100 Years of Terror. Terror Goes International.
This is Hans Martin Schleyer, president of the Employers Association of Germany. He has friends in high places and heads one of Germany's leading multinationals, Daimler-Benz. Schleyer's contacts reach all the way to the top, making him the perfect target to force the state down to its knees. Four Red Army faction top members are secretly assigned to carry out the operation. Among them is a young law student, Peter Jürgen Buck, who is caught shortly after the act.
What we did was unbelievable. It was an addictive sensation.
On a mild afternoon in September 1977, Schleyer leaves the headquarters of the German Employers Association. His chauffeur is at the wheel to drive him home to his exclusive apartment 30 minutes away. Close behind, in an unmarked police car, are the officers who form Schleyer's bodyguard. The tycoon is an emblem of the economy, wealth, high finance. He represents everything the RAF despises about capitalism. "25 minutes past 5, Schleyer's convoy is not alone. 3 miles down the road, the first RAF lookout spots them. He notifies a colleague 5 miles ahead that everything is on track. Schleyer is driven along exactly the same route as he is every day at this time. Another cue is relayed for 4 masked terrorists to stand by.
The timing worked out as planned. Schleyer's car turned the corner, then the car with the police escort.
From the back seat, Schleyer witnesses the massacre of his chauffeur and 3 bodyguards. The terrorists spray well over 500 bullets. Not one hits the man they want alive.
Then there was a moment of total silence. That was something unreal.
When the police arrive at the scene, they find the lifeless bodies of Schleyer's driver and 3 bodyguards. Bundling Schleyer into the getaway car, they make their way unrecognized to the next destination.
We drove into the underground parking lot. He was transferred into the trunk of a waiting Mercedes.
The terrorists abandon the getaway van, leaving a short letter inside. It is addressed to the German authorities, informing them of Schleyer's abduction. The letter states that further instructions will follow. But the German authorities refuse point blank to exchange Schleyer for any prisoners and launch a massive manhunt instead. The terrorists decide to force the issue and escalate the terror. They turn to their friends, the Palestinians. The chief of the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, Wadi Haddad, offers to help. The German terrorists trained under him and have kept him informed about the kidnapping.
We spoke to Haddad about it, and then came the big surprise. Just like a magician pulling a rabbit out of a hat, he said, there are 2 fully prepared operations ready to be launched at any time. You can take your pick. One was an attack on the German embassy in Kuwait, with taking hostages, and the other, a Lufthansa aircraft.
The terrorists decide to hijack a Lufthansa aircraft, believing that the threat of murdering innocent passengers will break the deadlock.
In our next hour, NORAD, the war game fortress on Modern Marvels.
The medieval medical gamble that proved to be a lifesaver. From the History Channel, the official network of every millennium. This is TimeLab 2000. The first woman on record to survive her cesarean section is the wife of Jakob Neuffer, a Swiss castrator of pigs. In 1500, Mrs. Neuffer is suffering severe labor pains. The baby won't come out. The mother's life hangs in the balance. A desperate Jakob decides to relieve his wife's suffering with a delicate stroke of his knife. To the doctor's surprise, both mother and child survive. The pig gelder's gamble proves the viability of an operation which eventually saves millions. But it doesn't become a routine procedure until better anesthetics become available. And today, husbands are requested to leave their knives at home. For the History Channel, I'm Sam Waterston.
The History Channel now returns to 100 Years of Terror.
October 11th, 1977, Palma de Mallorca. 4 Palestinians, 2 men and 2 women, check into the Java Hotel.
Not all of us knew all the details about the operation. The one who had all the details was Mahmoud, the leader, our leader. We knew that we should release 2 Palestinians from the prison, Palestinians from the prison. We should ask for money because this is the duty of Germany to pay us money the way they pay all the time for Israel. And most of all was to show the people that we have a problem, Palestinians have a problem. And hijacking worked before.
These are the last photos taken of the group posing as tourists 2 days before embarking on a more sinister journey. Seen here on the left, Mahmoud is the only one truly aware of the mission's double aim. On the evening before the operation, a special courier arrives from Germany and delivers 4 pistols, hand grenades, and explosives to the hotel. On Thursday, October 13th, 1977, the 4 terrorists check in for Lufthansa flight LH-81 for Frankfurt. 86 passengers are on board. Shortly after takeoff, Mahmoud signals his team that it's time to act.
He said to me, Suhaila, you must not show your Christian kindness in your heart, in your eyes. You have to play tough. This he told me.
As they reach cruising altitude, the terrorists burst into the cockpit and order Captain Jürgen Schumann to change course to Larnaca, Cyprus for refueling. This is the original recording of the conversation between the kidnapper and the control tower.
Captain Mahmoud?
Yes, who is it?
Are you Captain Mahmoud?
Yes, I am Captain Mahmoud.
Can you speak with me in Arabic, please?
I'm going to speak with you, okay? Whoever you are.
Okay, if you need anything for yourself or your colleagues or the passengers, we are ready to help you.
The plane refuels and immediately takes off for Dubai. A long and intense journey has begun, one with no apparent end in sight.
We felt that we and the passengers have been in the same boat. We have been in the same aeroplane, you know, and in the same situation. All of us were endangered, and this mutual feeling makes a kind of friendship between the people and the offenders, you can say. Unfortunately, I was one of them.
On Friday afternoon, they reach Dubai airport. The plane refuels and heads for Aden, South Yemen.
At 19:20 GMT, a machine of the Lufthansa.
In Aden, Captain Schumann is allowed off to check some faulty engineering. If he is not back within 15 minutes, Mahmoud warns, he signs his death warrant. Captain Schumann returns to the plane 45 minutes later. Mahmoud orders him to his knees. He obeys, clasping his hands above his head.
I wasn't actually sure until he dropped dead that he was going to kill him.
In Germany, the captain's relatives hear the news they were dreading. For the Germans, Schumann's execution is the last straw. A special commando unit whose chief was trained by Israel boards a plane to follow the kidnappers to their final destination. Arriving in Mogadishu, the hijackers issue a 9-hour ultimatum for the release of both German and Palestinian prisoners. Under the cover of darkness, the anti-terrorist squad storms the aircraft. Within minutes, 3 of the hijackers, including Mahmoud, are killed. Suela Sahi is injured.
It was very hard to know that all these people who have died because of this action, which wasn't meant that way. And I don't know, I was afraid of prison and of everything. I wanted to die at that time. And until now, I wished, many times, I wished that I have died at the same time.
Die von Terroristen in einer Lufthansa-Boeing entführten 86 Geiseln.
The next morning, October 19th, the Baader-Meinhof prisoners learn about the failed hijacking from the radio news report. At 7:30 a.m., prison guards discover the body of Andreas Baader, shot in the neck. A pistol, which had been smuggled into his cell, lies next to his body. Another RAF prisoner, Gudrun Enslin, is also found dead, hanging from one of the bars of her cell window by a piece of electrical wire. 5 months earlier, Ulrika Meinhof, embittered and disillusioned after 44 months in prison, hanged herself from her cell window.
The idea of suicide was always, in the mind of these people. I always had the feeling that the ideology of the group is not only political. From my point of view, it always had a very strong religious part. The religious part, in a certain way, to become martyrs.
Later that same day, October 19th, 1977, after the suicides, police find the bullet-riddled body of Hans Martin Schleyer in the trunk of an Audi 100 sedan. By the end of the 1970s, terrorism has become an international problem, and the vicious circle of violence goes on as terror groups will continue to learn from each other. Just a few months after Schleyer's abduction and murder, news breaks of a high-level kidnapping in Italy. On the 16th of March, 1978, Italian Red Brigade terrorists kidnapped the former Prime Minister, Aldo Moro. The operation is almost a mirror image of the Schleyer attack. A carbon copy method, similar demands, and exactly the same deadly result.